Now by this time, you've surely heard about strange phenomena happening in the Bermuda Triangle, like strong waves or even a vortex from time to time. But there's another territory equally as mysterious, only this time it's on land. It's called the Bennington Triangle. Some have argued that there must be some inexplicable force wreaking havoc here in this region, responsible for disappearances and unexplained phenomena. This location is also connected to Native American folklore, which further adds to its mystery. For some events, there are perfectly rational explanations. For others, we've yet to find out the truth. But let's start looking at this region's history. The unusual triangle is located in southwestern Vermont in the United States. Before any weird occurrences took place here, the area was occupied by the Abenaki tribe, first discovered in the 1600s. They were indigenous people that we know have lived throughout portions of Canada and the U.S. Their beliefs were strongly connected to the local weather. The Abenaki people thought one of their major spirits, named Tabaldak, lived on the peak of the Glassbury Mountain. Since the winds here tend to be pretty fussy, these tribespeople believed Tabaldak created a dangerous creature made out of rocks on these peaks, meant to scare people away. Years later, in the 1700s, this region became the location for a town called Glastonbury. It reached its peak popularity in the 19th century, but even then, the population never exceeded 250 people. These days, it is nothing more than a ghost town, with only 4 families living here in 2000. Sure, on one hand, the town was flooded in its entirety at one point, so this may be a reason why people chose to leave the area. But there is more. To this day, many felonies that happened here have yet to be solved. One story speaks of a man that attacked a co-worker, claiming he heard voices telling him to do so. Another one tells the story of a man that eventually lost his life after going hunting, despite no one being around him at the time, not even wildlife. Then there's the legend of a local wild man who was known to scare people in the towns of Bennington and Glastonbury. Nobody knew who he was or where he came from. He just appeared every once in a while, dressed in a black coat, terrorizing people using various devices, and then retreated to the forest. Today, the Bennington Triangle is mostly known for 6 unusual disappearances. They all happened between the years 1945 and 1950, soon after the town of Glastonbury was removed from official records by the state of Vermont. The first disappearance was that of Carl Herrick. He was out hunting with his cousin near Glastonbury Mountain. He was never found by local rescuers. Then there was another reported disappearance, that of an experienced hunter and hiker named Middle Rivers. Local authorities have no idea to this day what might have happened in this case. A college student named Paula Weldon soon had the same fate. Probably the most famous disappearance is that of James Tedford. He was last seen on a bus full of people. Witnesses from that day don't even remember him exiting the vehicle. Paul Jepson is also known to have vanished from this area. He was working on his family farm when he disappeared without a trace. His relatives recounted him telling them he was headed to Glassbury Mountain Forest before it happened. Ooh, spooky. Is there any connection between these events? Locals believe so, and weirdly enough, it has to do with the color red. Since at least 2 of the people that went missing here were last seen wearing this color, it became a local legend. People traveling through this area avoid wearing red to this day, in hopes they avoid whatever creature or natural phenomena might be targeting this color. Timing may have something to do with it too. Most of the people that were lost here were last seen late in the afternoon, between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. Bottom line, the most reasonable explanation behind the legend of the Bennington Triangle is its unusual weather. Even Native Americans that used to roam these areas thought that on top of the mountain was a meeting point of 4 winds, bound to eternally struggle with each other. Turns out there is some truth to this myth, as the wind direction on the mountain is unstable, making plants grow at strange angles. These conditions are known to often confuse even the most experienced hikers. The forest here is also wildly dense and filled with dangerous animals. Places like Bermuda or Bennington Triangle became famous for their mysterious disappearances, which may have some reasonable explanation behind them. But a whole train going missing? Back in 1911, a regular train was supposed to leave from a railway station in Rome, Italy. It was meant to reach the city of Milan. Surprisingly, none of the 106 passengers ever made it to the destination, and they were also never seen again. You can't help but wonder, were they really lost forever? Weirdly enough, it may not be the case based on some local folklore. As it was completing its journey, the train was supposed to pass through a long tunnel. It did enter it, but nothing ever came out the other end of the tunnel. Nothing was left of the train, and it seemed like it simply just vanished into thin air. Out of all the people on board, a mere 2 were found, but they were quite unwell at the time they were discovered. Also, the story they told did not seem to make much sense. They remembered a dense fog that took over the entirety of the train. To escape, they jumped out of the windows because they got so scared. 15 years later, a story emerged about a group of 104 Italian people that appeared all of a sudden in Mexico City, claiming they arrived by train from Rome. Now, if that's not weird enough, this story appears to have been reported back in 1845, which was 66 years before the train had even departed in the first place. Turns out this whole story was nothing but a local urban legend that originated in a piece of literature, but it did get an amazing amount of popularity. Speaking of the Bermuda Triangle, wasn't I? Yes, I was. It's not the only place on Earth where ships go missing. It's just the most popular. Whenever a ship happens to sink, you'd expect at least to find pieces of it on the bottom of the sea, right? Well, not if you're traveling through Lake Superior, located along the border of the United States and Canada. This one gained popularity due to a large number of ships that went missing while sailing it. It may have something to do with the stormy winds, similar to what happens in the Bennington Triangle. Of course, that doesn't explain why some ships simply vanish altogether, without a single piece of them ever to be found, not even at the bottom of the lake. It does gather a lot of tourists each year, though, looking to scuba dive and see the remains of some of the ships that still lie here. The bottom of this lake even contains what's left of the famous SS Edmund Fitzgerald. Back when it departed on June 7, 1958, it was the largest ship on North America's Great Lakes, and to this day, it's still the largest ship ever to have sunk in the area. Why this ship sank in the first place is yet another mystery. Yosemite National Park is one of the most popular natural resorts in the world, but it does hide dark secrets of its own. Despite its beauty and abundance of wildlife, a total of 45 people went missing right here in this location and were never found again. There are even stories of people that disappeared from one area of the park only to be stumbled upon in a completely different location, with some of their clothes missing, no less. This hasn't stopped the over 3 million people from visiting the park each year, but many of them do dress in layers.
What's the most mysterious and blood-chilling place on Earth? The first thing that comes to mind is most likely the infamous Bermuda Triangle. This area has earned its spooky reputation after swallowing numerous ships and airplanes, which then disappeared without a trace. But is this place really so terrifying? Let's ask scientists. But first, I'll tell you a story or two. One of the most infamous disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle was Mary Celeste. The ship was found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean on December 4, 1872. It was days after its journey began. Captain Benjamin Briggs with his wife and a 2-year-old daughter were heading from New York to Genoa in Italy with some important cargo. Besides the family of the captain, there were 7 other crew members on board the ship. Days later, a British ship, Dei Gratia, came across Mary Celeste by accident. Strangely, the ship was floating under a partial sail. Everything on board was intact. There was nothing strange with this situation, except for one thing. There was nobody on board the ship, and the lifeboat was missing. There were no traces of people on the ship. It couldn't be a pirate attack since all the belongings of the crew, as well as the cargo, were untouched. Theories like an undersea earthquake, an attack of a giant squid, or a natural disaster can be ruled out as well. They just don't fit. It was a clear day, The ship was in perfect condition. Why would people leave it and never come back? Whatever the reason, neither the crew nor the lifeboat has ever been found. It was November 29, 1925, when the SS Cotopaxi left Charleston, South Carolina, and headed for Havana, Cuba, carrying a big load of coal and 32 crew members. The story has it that several days later, the steamer ran into a severe storm, got water in its hold, and started to list dramatically. On December 1st, the ship sent out a distress call, and since then, nothing has been heard from the crew ever again. The ship was believed to have vanished into thin air until it was found 95 years later. Scientists found SS Cotopaxi, and it turned out there was nothing mysterious about its story. At the moment, the ship lies at the bottom of the ocean about 35 miles away from St. Augustine, Florida. Researchers are also sure that the ship did send a distress signal during a storm, which most likely led to the sinking of the vessel. USS Cyclops was a huge carrier ship that used to supply fuel to the American fleet. On January 8, 1918, heavy and full of manganese ores, the ship departed from Rio de Janeiro and headed for Baltimore. Being only a couple of years old, the ship wasn't supposed to experience any problems. All 309 people on board felt safe and calm. But this feeling turned out to be deceptive because somewhere around March 4th, 1918, the ship disappeared into thin air without sending a distress call or indicating it was having problems in any other way. In the history of the U.S. Navy, this case remains the accident that caused the largest loss of life at a time. SS El Faro was a much more recent disappearance. This cargo ship left Jacksonville, Florida on October 1st, 2015 with 33 crew members and tons of vehicles, trailers, and containers on board. The huge vessel was supposed to deliver its load to Puerto Rico, but something went wrong. A regular tropical storm that started miles away suddenly transformed into a powerful hurricane that rushed towards El Faro. It started to circle around the cargo ship, making the communication from the vessel go silent. But the most shocking thing was that after causing all this commotion, the hurricane miraculously retreated in the same direction it had come from. Weeks later, after a thorough and extensive search, rescuers finally located the ship. It was still in one piece and sitting upright on the bottom at a depth of 15,000 feet. But the blood-chilling truth was that there was no trace of the crew members on board. As for airplanes, probably the most inexplicable disappearance happened on December 5, 1945. This case got the name the Lost Patrol. Flight 19 was the code name for 5 planes that departed from a naval base in Florida on a training flight. No one knows for sure what happened to the planes, but they never returned to the base. Most experts believe the commander of this group, Charles Taylor, got lost and led the planes in the wrong direction. Those were the machines that could land on water, so hypothetically, after getting low on fuel, the pilots could ditch and wait for help, rocking on the surface of the ocean. But it didn't happen. Although 2 rescue Martin Mariner planes were searching the area all through the night and the next day, they found no trace of the 5 disappeared planes. But the most spine-chilling coincidence was that one of the rescue planes failed to return to the base as well. All 6 planes vanished into thin air, as if they had never existed. There have been several other plane disappearances when aircraft went off radars and never returned. In some cases, pilots had to send out a Mayday distress call. In others, they disappeared in the blink of an eye when everything seemed to be going perfectly fine. Of course, over the years, there have been loads of theories trying to explain the phenomenon of the Bermuda Triangle. For example, some researchers believe that ships and planes crash and disappear in the area due to methane gas. And it has indeed been proven that in some areas of the ocean floor, there are massive storages of this gas. Therefore, when gas gets released into the water, the process can sink ships and make planes crash. Potentially, it can happen so fast that a craft in distress doesn't even have time to send SOS. The theory of a wormhole is preferred by those who love sci-fi. In short, a wormhole is a space-time shortcut. While the existence of wormholes hasn't been proven yet, this doesn't stop some people from believing that this phenomenon is what causes vanishings in the Bermuda Triangle. Another sci-fi theory is based on the interface of space civilizations. It's quite convenient to blame such disappearances on extraterrestrial forces. Though why they would choose exactly this area for their abductions remains unknown. Waterspouts, or simpler, tornadoes in the ocean, are said to have been spotted in the Bermuda Triangle. This weather phenomenon raises water many feet up into the air. Potentially, this can make a ship disappear with ease. The human error theory may sound rather disappointing for those who love mysteries, but some are sure that all the crashes and disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle happen due to people's mistakes. There are too many confusing islands that are hard to distinguish from one another, as well as difficult weather conditions there. And now, let's see what modern-day scientists have to say. Disappointingly, they claim there's no mystery in the Bermuda Triangle whatsoever. The loss and disappearance of planes and ships is just a fact of probabilities. Researchers are sure that there's no evidence that in the Bermuda Triangle, mysterious events occur more often than in any other well-traveled large region of the ocean. The sheer volume of all that traffic in an area that is pretty hard to navigate gives us such unsettling statistics. But on a percentage basis, the number of vessels and aircraft missing in the Bermuda Triangle is the same as anywhere else in the world. And what theory do you believe?
It was the wealthiest and most beautiful city ever to be seen. Stepping through its central gate alone would take your breath away with its elaborate decorations and towering marble statues. Everywhere you'd look, you'd find yet another marvel of civil engineering and cultural prowess. Yes, the lost city of Atlantis was truly the pinnacle of ancient civilization. That is, if it ever existed. Since it was supposedly swallowed by the sea in its entirety, it's no wonder some curious minds linked it to the Bermuda Triangle, another subject of endless mystery in popular culture, suspected of swallowing quite a few missing planes and ships. In the late 1960s, it's said that a group of treasure hunters stumbled upon the remains of an ancient city while diving in the Bermuda Triangle off the coast of Miami. Not only did they claim to encounter some intricate-looking ruins, but they also claimed that they found a glass pyramid there, larger than any other pyramid ever discovered in Egypt. A huge glass pyramid on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean? No, that story turned out to be a hoax. Nevertheless, we do know that strange phenomena are still happening in the Bermuda Triangle, like volatile water currents or even the occasional vortex. When anyone mentions the Bermuda Islands, this mythical triangle is often the first thing that comes to mind, due to all the mysterious disappearances or unexplained malfunctions. But there's a lot more to this territory than one mysterious triangle. Let me tell you about it, just in case you might want to visit. For a time after its discovery, Bermuda was briefly known as the Somers Isle, named after George Somers, a British privateer and naval hero. But the name that eventually stuck was the initial name, Bermuda, named after Juan de Bermudez, an explorer from Spain who discovered it in 1505. It's the oldest remaining British territory overseas, going back to a time before even the United Kingdom was established. The island's geographical creation is also unique. Scientists have recently discovered that the volcano that had generated this piece of land is like no other on Earth. Since it has pleasant weather almost all year, it's a great place for golfing, sporting 8 world-class courses, often frequented by famous golf players or celebrities. You might just run into one by accident, if you're lucky. If you're more of a music fan, you would be interested to know that John Lennon got the inspiration for about 25 of his songs right here on this island, including classics such as Watching the Wheels, Woman, and Just Like Starting Over. Bermuda's official online travel guide even provides a Lennon-inspired itinerary, taking you from the Bermuda Botanical Gardens to the Masterworks Museum of Bermuda Art to Front Street, a district well known for its very active nightlife. William Shakespeare himself has an interesting connection with this island. His famous play, The Tempest, a story about a shipwrecked crew that end up on a magical island where they are tormented by an old man and his servants, was initially going to be set in the Mediterranean. But after learning about a real-life shipwreck in Bermuda, Shakespeare was supposedly inspired, and so moved the setting here. The island is also home to some fascinating animal wildlife. On hot summer nights, a special insect that glows in the dark, called the Bermuda fireworm, can be found in protected bay areas. There's also a unique species of birds here, the cowhouse, also known as Bermuda petrels. Believed to be extinct for about 300 years, they were rediscovered back in the 1950s, and a sanctuary was built for their protection. Currently, there are about 300 of these birds in Bermuda, total. Some of the first sailors to end up on the island at times reported strange sounds coming from inland and the surrounding waters after sunset. They even described what they heard as children screaming. So, of course, they thought it must have been because of witches or sea monsters. It took a little more time and research to figure out the sounds were coming from the cowhouse. These birds emit a very specific sound that can be easily confused with distressed human noises. Just as the Netherlands are famous for their tulips and Brazil for its coffee, Bermuda is well known for, drumroll please, onions. Yes, Bermuda used to export an amazing amount of onions back in the day, and the general quality of the vegetables produced here is said to be very high. Bermudians, that's how people living in Bermuda are called, are so proud of their onion heritage that when the clock strikes 12 on New Year's, a giant-sized onion decorated with beautiful lights is dropped in St. George's Town Square to usher in a new year. This is a big part of Bermudian tradition, as their onion heritage is a point of pride for the Bermudian people. The community of Bermuda is known to be tight-knit and to be very friendly and sociable. It's common to say hi to everyone on the street, even if you aren't properly introduced. Not greeting people when entering a shop or jumping into a bus is actually considered rude, so be sure to get accustomed to locals saying hello when paying a visit. Another fascinating aspect of Bermuda is its architecture. The houses are all painted in bright, zesty colors. Bermudians take very good care of their homes, even repainting them every 4 to 5 years. And they can even choose the color of their house without any limits. The roofs, however, are a completely different story. When visiting, you will notice that they are all white and terraced. Here's why. Since there is no public water system in Bermuda, people living here have to collect their own water. And that's what the roofs are for. Rainwater is collected on the roofs and then funneled into water tanks for storage and future use. That's why it's so important that the roofs remain white. Not only is it much easier to spot debris on a white surface, but the white cement also helps with sanitizing the water. What about transportation? Well, only residents can drive a car here, and only a single car is permitted per household in terms of ownership. So if your trip itinerary includes renting a car, you may want to rethink it. If riding a bus is not your preference, there's always the option of renting a scooter. You just have to remember to drive on the left side of the road. It is a British colony after all. This wonderful location is also one of the few places on Earth with pink, sandy beaches. Because it's surrounded by coral reefs that are responsible for the special red pigment, Bermuda is home to some of the most spectacularly colored beaches in the world, such as Horseshoe Bay Beach, West Whale Bay, or South Shore Park. For those interested in more of a culinary experience, Bermuda has some interesting local dishes to explore. Its geographical location and the fact that it's surrounded by water mean that most local courses are based on fish and seafood. Here you can get a nice codfish breakfast, a Bermuda fish cake, or their famous Hoppin' John, a dish made with black-eyed peas, sliced sausage, bacon or chicken, Bermuda onion of course, and some brown rice, often seasoned with garlic and thyme. They do this last one for special occasions, like in January, during the Bermuda Restaurant Weeks, a culinary festival that you'd better not miss if you love a good feast. For a place to chill with a fantastic view, Bermuda offers 2 historic lighthouses, each with its own delightful peculiarities. To get to Gibbs Hill Lighthouse, for example, you would have to make a long pilgrimage up 185 steps. There's no elevator to get you there, so be sure you're properly hydrated before starting the journey. The panoramic view of the ocean, however, will make up for all the effort. There is also St. David's Lighthouse, which is known as an ideal spot for whale watching. Particularly in March and April, humpback whales generally pass through these waters as they travel north to their feeding grounds in Canada. The National Museum of Bermuda also provides an array of unique experiences, such as the Dolphin Quest. Through this program, tourists have the opportunity to view, meet, and interact with dolphins in a sheltered, natural ocean lagoon environment. Searching for the best hidden Instagrammable spots? Then Crystal and Fantasy Caves is the place for you. They were actually discovered by accident in 1907. 2 young boys, Carl Gibbons and Edgar Hollis, lost their ball while playing cricket. When one of the boys went down a hole to get the ball back, he discovered this magical place full of crystal formations surrounding a beautiful lake. Crystal and Fantasy Caves attract a huge number of tourists each year, and through a number of recently constructed bridges, they are now more easily accessible. Be sure to wear comfortable shoes, though. There's lots of other geographic, historic, and cultural attractions I could talk about, but I think you get the gist. Bermuda is a lovely and vibrant island paradise that offers so much more than conspiracy theories about missing planes and lost cities. The weather is pleasant, the people are friendly, and there's so much to do on this beautiful island. So what are you waiting for? Book a flight today! Just a suggestion, of course.